Hello, my name's Mike Schoening. Today I'm going to be representing a corporal in the Civil War Artillery. We're going to talk a little bit about artillery weapons during the Civil War. We're going to go back in time to talk about their predecessors during the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, and then a little bit about the future or the current weapons of today and how they've advanced. And then we're going to talk about the guns that are used by the infantry, the individual soldier, and we'll have some of all of those to talk about and look at. So I represent a corporal. I've got the two stripes on my arm. They're in red. That's what signifies that I'm in the artillery. I am responsible for a gun on a crew, and the crew would be part of a regiment. The regiment would have 6 guns. The unit I represent was Lily's battery. That was a mega battery, what they called, and so we had 3 rifled ordnance pieces and 6 howitzers, and we'll talk about the difference in those two. Every gun at this time up to the Civil War was a muzzle loader. That means you put everything down the front end of that barrel and pushed it all the way to the back, which is called the breech, before you could fire it. That doesn't matter whether it's a gun used by an individual, a rifle, a shotgun, whatever, or a cannon. It wasn't until the end of the Civil War that we got to breech-loaded guns like we have today in modern times. So there's 21 orders for loading a handgun, a long rifle for an individual soldier. There's 9 orders to load a cannon for an artillery piece, and I would be responsible as the corporal for overseeing one gun and making sure that it got loaded correctly and fired correctly, and that we kept up the pace that they wanted. The pace that was required was 3 rounds every minute, if we could do that, and it's certainly doable. The way the loading works is we take there's a cannon, and about 20 feet back is a limber, a box that has all the ammunition in it. The gun gets cleared first. There's 5 men on the gun. Each of them has a job to get that gun ready. Then we bring the round up, load it in the gun, fire it, and start all over again. When we're out on the field, not in practice, but in a battle, you aren't going to hear many commands given because you can't hear them anyway. It's too noisy. If you got a battery of 6 cannons and you've got 5 or 6 batteries next to each other, you're going to have so much noise you can't hear anything. In fact, the noise is so bad, the concussion from the guns at the Battle of Gettysburg rang church bells in Philadelphia. So that's a long distance, and that's how much that shock wave travels. So you can imagine what it's like right up next to it. The types of guns that we used, again, we talked about a howitzer and an ordnance piece. So a howitzer is just a tube with a smooth bore. All you're doing is trying to tilt that piece up, shoot something out of it that goes up in a big arc, and you just want to get enough power behind it to get it to the top of that arc, and then gravity's going to pull it down. So you're trying to describe a rainbow that lands on the people you're trying to hit or the things you're trying to hit. A rifled ordnance piece, on the other hand, was a new idea in the Civil War, and it had grooves down the tube that twist, just like a rifle that we would use as an individual soldier. The beauty of that was we only had to lift it up about 5 degrees. If you're thinking about degrees, this would be 90 degrees, this would be 45 degrees. Normally you shoot a cannon at 15 to 20 degrees. We would shoot it at 5 degrees, which is barely anything at all, and we would still get a mile to a mile and a quarter out of a shot. That's pretty good range without any lift on it. And we would shoot an 8-pound cartridge. The cartridges differ, so in a smoothbore you can shoot all kinds of stuff out of that. You can shoot just a solid round cast iron ball. If you're trying to knock down something solid like a tree or a building, you can shoot out an iron ball that is hollow in the center, full of gunpowder with a fuse in it, and you hope it explodes near the people you're shooting at, so the shrapnel just kills as many as possible. You can shoot out what's called a canister, which is a really loose, sometimes a bag full of sawdust and a bunch of balls about that big around. And what you're doing is that canister is going to come apart as soon as it leaves the end of your barrel. You're shooting a really big shotgun, so you're just clearing out anybody that's close enough to you within about 50 yards. You're just mowing them down. You can also shoot case shot. Think of it as like a coffee can, and it's full of those same balls, and it's full of powder, and it's got a fuse in it. You stick the canister down the gun. When the gun goes off, the powder, when it lights the fuse. And you're trying to lift that canister up above a bunch of infantry out in the field. You want that canister to go off in midair and just shower those balls down on everybody, and you just see them dropping all over the place. And so very effective ammunition, different ammunition for different jobs. You get to the rifled ordnance piece, and we have an 8-pound cast iron shell. It either has a paper back on it or it has a lead back on it, and that's to catch the grooves in the rifling, so it really twists it, really sends it out nice and straight. And most of that 8 pounds is cast iron, but there's also powder inside that shell. It has a nose cap that has a contact explosive in it. When it hits something solid, the nose cap goes off, the powder goes off, and shrapnel blows a big hole in whatever it hits. So it's a really great piece for taking out buildings, trees, readouts, anything where people are hiding. And the whole purpose of Lily's battery was we had the howitzers and we had these rifled ordnance pieces. We also had dismounted cavalry with us. Those are guys on horseback that actually fight on foot. So we would all ride in together. The cavalry would ride up ahead of us between us and the enemy. We would start shelling the enemy as quick as we can, take out anything they could hide behind, and the artillery or the dismounted cavalry would start picking them off as soon as they started running around. And it was late enough in the war that the dismounted cavalry had the repeater rifles, which could fire much more quickly. So we caused a lot of damage, a lot of psychological damage to the enemy because we were in so fast and did so much. Now you get the Navy, they have cannons on their ships as well, but they got a whole different job. They're trying to take out ships. They're not so much taking out people. Not that they didn't do that. That's collateral damage for them. But they had cannons that would shoot different kinds of ammunition than what I just talked about. They had balls that were hollow with powder in them that would explode. They shot a lot of solid balls to poke holes in the sides of a ship. They shot what we would be a bolt, which is a solid iron bar. It's not a ball, and that would go right through something solid. That would put a hole in it. They would shoot chain and ball. So 2 balls with a chain in between them. When it came out, it would just whip around, and that's to take out rigging or take out sails or people or to hit a mast and kind of swing around it and take that mast out so the sail falls over. And they also had to worry about when they fired, because their boat, remember, the cannons are on pointing out either side of the boat. The boat's in the water and they rock side to side. So half the time your cannon's pointing down at the water, half your time your cannon's pointing up in the air. You're trying to time things. You want to hit the ship you're firing at. Sometimes you want to hit it below the water line. So you're waiting for it to come up and you're kind of pointing down. You're shooting a hole right in the low spot of that hull. And so when it goes back down, water pours into it. That's a great tactic. Or you're shooting up above the deck to try and take out the masts and the spars and the rigging. So you got to pick what you're trying to do. But the Navy has a different job to do. They're supposed to fire the same rate of fire we do, 3 rounds a minute. And they're in a lot of cramped quarters. They can't stand up hardly. It's really dark inside a ship. There's not much light in there. And the other thing about these weapons, it doesn't matter on the battlefield, in a boat it's worse, but there's a lot of smoke. This powder makes a lot of smoke, and it's full of sulfur. And so you get 20 cannons lined up. If the wind's blowing the wrong way, you're going to be standing around choking on smoke. It's full of sulfur. Sulfur is acidic. It makes your eyes water. So you're half deaf or deaf from the cannons going off. You can't stop crying because of the sulfur, and you can't hardly breathe. It is not a lot of fun to do that, except when you see the damage you caused to the other side, everybody gets to cheer for that. So, all right.